The protagonist is looking to enter a high school club, because it is mandatory in this place. So he plans to choose one that interests him and where he can leave early to have fun. Suddenly he comes across the magic club, where we see a beautiful girl named Tejina practicing for her show. When she is discovered, she gets very nervous and starts vomiting. The boy thinks she was sick or something similar, but in reality, she just had stage fright after this. She prepares a trick to welcome him. Although while she does it, the dove that she had in her hat escapes. Boy tries to tell her, but in the end, Tejina realizes this in the middle of the act. To make up for it, she decides to do another trick by cutting the 1,000 yens of the protagonist and returning them to normal, as expected. This does not work, and she pretends that she did it by taking the intact ones out of his wallet. Disappointed, the protagonist leaves the club, but the girl convinces him to stay for her main event called the Pretty Senpai, tied with a rope that catches the boy's attention. Then Tejina is tied up and starts to use her magic to free herself. But during the process, he ends up getting tangled and the trick works out well, but only for the boy. Another day, the boy walks calmly until he finds Tejina, who is being surrounded by several students. One of them complains to her because she cut his money, so the girl sees the protagonist mentioning that he is her assistant and will help her with that. Boy tries to escape, but is trapped with no other option. He helps Tejina doing some magic tricks to save time, although he only knew some very common ones. However, this ends drawing more attention, unlike the tricks of Tejina, who looks the protagonist in jealousy. Later she presents her main event where she will escape from a box, although she did not seem to be completely ready. The protagonist does his job as an assistant, locking her up in this way. Minutes pass, and the girl can't get out, so the boy ends up carrying the box, so she doesn't have any more embarrassment on another occasion. He is calm in class, and is suddenly called by the Tejina through the megaphone, saying that it is something urgent, but it turns out that she had only baked bread and wanted to share it. The boy thinks they are suspicious, so he makes Tejina eat it first. When she passes the test, he does it too, but he finds a key in the bread. As revenge, he leaves her locked in the box. The girl tries to do a trick with her fingers, scared. The protagonist ends up getting chalked by the bread, and Tejina has no better idea than to do a trick with milk and newspaper, which ends with her soaked, causing the protagonist to be saved. The next day, Tejina brings he pigeon, mentioning that they spent the day together, strengthening their relationship so she won't run away from her again. The boy asks her why she always uses white doves, where she explains that they are actually a type of amulet, that being smaller, are easy to hide, and the white color makes them look bigger when they open their wings. After saying this, she releases her, but the bird ends up escaping and flies all over the room. Tejina tries to get her attention with food, although the pigeon ends up getting into her sweater until she finally comes out through her lap and flies out the window. Another day, we see that the protagonist is alone in the cafeteria at that moment. He notices the presence of Tejina, who is also eating alone. Excitedly, she tells him that she wants to do a magic trick by bending a normal spoon. Although the boy doesn't believe her, she explains to him that this is possible using physics, though he tries it and ends up doing that, but Tejina ends up throwing her spoon. Then the assistant is going to bring her a new one. Here, the girl realizes that she spilled super spicy sauce on the protagonist's plate. To prevent him from getting angry, she pretends that she will hypnotize him into thinking that the curry is spicy. The boy does not end up believing it, so he makes her eat a little because supposedly it should not be spicy for her. Later, Tejina tries to practice the trick of the coin that goes through the glass, where she had to surreptitiously push the coin into the glass. Although the girl makes it fly away, she goes to look for it, causing her panties to be seen. Worried, she must be careful with what she does, although she thinks he's talking about her magic tricks. That's why she says she won't fail again. Then we see that they continue to have incidents here. The boy asks if she does it on purpose, to which she answers yes, mentioning that she wants to practice a little embarrassed. The protagonist continues to think that she is referring to something else. The more the girl says, the bigger the misunderstanding becomes. Then Tejina asks him if he wants to do it. The protagonist doesn't waste at the moment, and accepts but ends up being hit by the girl's coin. Their world now we see the protagonist meet the girl during a sunny day she was trying to entertain some children with some magic. None of them liked her tricks. That's why now she uses the assistant to entertain them. Then the boy shows them how he dominates Bimon. The children are not stupid, and they realize that it is a stuffed animal, and Tejina performs a quick change of clothes. The trick was that she had 2 Velcro closures on the back of her clothes. Meanwhile, the children and the protagonist are distracted by playing in Amither. That's why the girl ends up mentioning that she forgot to bring her change of clothes, so she runs through the trees later on. The assistant is in the last week to choose a club. Hearing this, Tejina locks him up to convince him to join the magic club. She ties him up to teach him some tricks with rubber rabbits. Although it turns out to be a little unpleasant at that moment, the girl reveals that the club is not official because they need at least 1 more member to maintain it. Though Tejina takes advantage of having him tied up to present his membership application. This way they go to the teacher's room, where the girl gets nervous when she sees a teacher, so he tries to leave. She stops her, revealing that she is her older sister, whom Tejina thinks is someone very annoying. She reviews the papers and asks her to show her some of her tricks. Then Tejina takes out some cards, but her sister embarrasses her by saying that first she must do her presentation pose. Continuing with the magic act, sister chooses 1 letter and puts it in the deck. Although when she reveals it and notes that she drew something filthy to tease her. Then she suggests becoming the club advisor, but in the midst of all the trube, she ends up being scolded by the director later. The girl says she will do a surprise inspection to see if the protagonist has practiced his magic tricks properly. Although in reality, it was only a pretext to criticize him and reaffirm his authority. But the boy already expected it, so he starts with his tricks using Bimon, but Tejina spends his time interrupting him, criticizing everything he does. That makes the boy very angry and suggests that she should show him how to do it. This moment is used by the protagonist to take revenge. However, he realizes that the girl had torn her dress, showing her panties. The protagonist searches for advice online, suggesting that she should drink water to calm down. Although Tejina drinks too much, then she had to regulate her breathing, which leads her to bath. Then she has to induce a kind of hypnosis to relax, ends up falling asleep. Finally, the boy suggests that she try to distract herself, so Tejina thinks that she can achieve it. He tickles her. The boy reluctantly accepts, but he realizes that he has to have physical contact with her senpai. So he doesn't waste time. Fortunately, she doesn't realize what he did and asks him to tickle her well. Then the protagonist goes all out, leaving her on the floor. After that, the girl wears a kimono, because she wants to do Japanese magic. This consisted of the butterfly dance, drawing water from some fans, and a plane of paper where she turns the paper into soup. First one who tries is the butterfly dance, but she doesn't move any, but the protagonist does it as if nothing had happened. Afterwards, she tries to light the udon, but she burns the butterflies, activating the sprinklers. The next day, they go on an excursion. However, the reality is that they left because of the fire they caused. Despite that, Tejina wants to continue doing magic, but the protagonist reminds her that she no longer has her tools. The girl says that she only needs some pigeons, so she rushes towards them, which ends up with them biting her. Then she uses an umbrella to climb a tree and steal the eggs from a nest. Although she is attacked again, the protagonist says to surrender and discovers that the girl cannot go down, so he decides to leave her to her fate. Then Tejina celebrates that a month has passed because the protagonist joined the club, so she does a commemorative trick by cutting ard rope that represents the destiny that unites them and then reconnects it. His arm event, though she doesn't succeed. The boy enjoys it a lot. Finally, Tejina does a card trick. Tired of the failures, the protagonist ends up leaving. Although the girl tries to stop him by making him swear to stay in the magic club at that moment. Tejina's sister appears from the box. She informs them that they rejected their form because they do not have enough members. Then she leaves, mentioning that they should send another form next week. For his part, the protagonist says that he will have to look for another club. But the girl goes into yandere mode. A gymnastics club arrives to invite the girl because she saw her great physical ability. Even when she tries a test, she ends up breaking records. But Tejina just took advantage of the moment to invite them to her club. Later, the girl brings the new members of the club. It was pigeons. Apparently this one. Maybe she had already learned to take care of them because when she releases them to play, they don't escape. Here she comments to the protagonist that the pigeons are male and female, so she plans to raise magic pigeons from a young age. The boy asks her if those birds are not noisy, but Tejina responds that they don't make noise at night. However, this ends up being false. Now we see that it was the protagonist's last day in the club, so Tejina wants to farewell him with a sword trick, where clearly the boy chooses to stab them because he doesn't want to be in danger. Tejina explains that she must do it in an empty box. Then she will come out from below to pretend that she was always inside. As this does not work out, the girl decides to do it the old-fashioned way and avoiding the swords with her feminine intuition. The protagonist begins with the trick, warning that the swords are sharp, despite being toys, but Tejina doesn't care. In the end, we see how all her clothes ended up torn. Later, we see her practicing her presentation tricks where, fortunately, everything turns out without any error. The only bad thing was that the protagonist was no longer there to see her. Anyway, she continues with her rope trick. At that moment, the boy who came from the chemistry club appears, mentioning that he was accepted. Despite that, he will continue to frequent the magic club, even if it is not official, which makes the girl very happy, even she falls to the ground tangled during a rainy day. Protagonist tells Tejina that they are in trouble because some observers will come, so he asks her not to do any magic. It turns out that some of the protagonist's companions want to see the girl. Laugh a little, that's why he wants to keep her out of it, so that it doesn't harm his school life because, according to him, everyone sees him as a cool guy. Having said that, he tries to hide Tejina before the girls come. She refuses a little, so he plans to put her in the escape box. Although surely at any moment she could come out. Then the girls appear, although they are scared by Tejina, who is wearing a scary suit. After a while, the girl and her sister tell the protagonist that they developed a new trick to change clothes. As the teacher was, the costume specialist suggested that the girl make quick changes of clothes. The bad thing is that each layer she removed made the costumes more revealing. Now we are introduced to Madara, president of the chemistry club. She is a very considerate girl who let the protagonist join the club. However, he doesn't have much of a topic of conversation. The boy asks him if chemistry is the same as magic, but Madara responds a little annoyed that they are very different. She also mentions that in the magic club they do shameless things because they always overhear strange sounds. Then she shows him how he can bend a bottle with her mind, but she explains that she did it by applying hot water and chemistry was much more than that. That's why she shows him something more impressive. Later, she appears with a vortex cannon, which when hit from the sides, it can expel bursts of air in the shape of a donut. Apparently, despite the fact that Madara doesn't like magic, she doesn't stop using similar materials. So she inadvertently confesses that she admires Tejina's persistence on her part. She waits for the protagonist in her box to surprise him. Although he ends up sitting on it, as the girl did not want to ruin her trick, she tries to get him out of the room using her phone. Unfortunately, she ends up challenging him with all her materials. Meanwhile, the protagonist begins to say that everything feels calm when the girl is not there. Even mentions all the defects she has. Clearly he wouldn't tell her that on her face. He also says that the good thing about her is her beauty. Above all, that he likes her. That leaves Tejina very shocked. Blushing excitedly, the boy imagines an elegant place. But it was the complete opposite. Here she plans argue about what she heard the day before. But each of her attempts are sabotaged by herself, using her magic tricks. That's why the protagonist thinks that she surely wants to practice a new one. She follows along, and they practice disappearing handkerchiefs that were actually her own underwear. Embarrassed, she ends up saying how she heard that he liked her, and that she summoned him to give him an answer. Although the boy mentions that he never said that, the next day, the boy wonders where she heard that he liked her. Anyway, he admits that he likes her great personality at that moment. He is heard by a girl named Saki. She says that she came to take over the club. Tejina quickly appears to prevent it, then the girl shows her that she can make figures with balloons. This was part of her street show and she wanted to use the magic club. For this reason, she also mentions that his brother named Maki could be the president. The girl describes him as someone handsome and intelligent. Although the protagonist does not remember anyone with those characteristics, suddenly the boy appears to be a little different from his description. He says that he does not want to be president, but is content with being a member. For her part, Tejina didn't really agree. So she tries to suggest that it be a street magic club. Zaki tells her brother that he convinces the girl by making balloon animals, but he ends up bursting it. The girl tries to do a human balloon trick where she realizes that she forgot her skirt. Despite this, she continues with her show, leaving the protagonist surprised. Egina doesn't want to be left behind, so she forces the boy to also show his talents. And, as expected, pants, which leaves him embarrassed in the end. Saki makes the boys vote to have the street show club angry. Tegina gets into a fight with the girl at that moment. Her sister arrives to solve the problem. Competition to see who has the greatest personality. Where Tegina wins another day. The girl tries to hypnotize the protagonist, turn him into her puppet, but none of her techniques work. She realizes that fools are easier to hypnotize, so Tegina makes the boy try it with her. The first thing they do is transfer the girl's senses to a bottle, where now everything they do to the bottle, the girl will feel it. That's why he starts by tickling her. Although it goes a bit too far, he then says that he will take the opportunity to take revenge with some mischief. Then gets imaginary scenarios in the hypnotized person, which is why he makes the girl believe that they are in the hot springs. Then she begins to prepare for the bathroom. Upon seeing this, protagonist regrets it and tries to get her out of hypnosis. By reading the magazine, he discovers that the hypnotized person will never do anything he or she does not want. Basically, Tegina is not opposed to the idea of them going to the hot springs together. Yet the boy makes her pretend to be a cat so she doesn't continue taking off her clothes. Later we see how he can't wake her up. It occurs to him that maybe he can cure her stage fright with hypnosis. In this way, he begins to say that she is an excellent magician and is about to present her tricks on stage. However, the next day we see that hypnotism failed to cure her. Now we see Zaki at the pastry club where everyone takes their desserts to eat. Meanwhile, Aki stays watching the oven so that her cookies don't burn. Here she takes advantage to ask Tegina why she is obsessed with the club, to which she responds that during her first year there were a lot of people, but then they all graduated and they left her alone. When she tried to look for new members, she didn't get any. Despite that, she continues with her attempts to revive the magic club. This causes Zaki's admiration, and she proposes eating the girl's cookies while they bake hers. But she tells her not to touch them, because she made them for her assistant, and they are dangerous. After a while, they both give away their cookie, where the protagonist distrusts the ones that Tegina made. Although after eating them, nothing strange happened. However, we see that Maki did end up harmed because there was a mix-up with the cookies the next day. Tegina reports that they received funds for the club. Excitedly, they check the envelope where there is almost no money without another option. They start collecting funds. Senpai tries to do her failed magic tricks. That's why Zaki says that they better do their street shows. This way, they start with their balloon shows, managing to attract the attention of the people who give them a lot of money. Meanwhile, Tegina tries to be a human statue. Although it becomes difficult, she receives praise from some boys who only wanted to see her paint. Arriving in the afternoon, we see that Zaki and Maki manage to collect a good amount of money, among other things, that the little boys gave them, shortly after he sees how she throws them in the trash. Then the boys go to the pool here. Tegina says that they will practice magic tricks to escape under the water. She will enter the water tied hand and foot, where she will release itself and then come to the surface. Before entering, the girl warns that the trick can go very wrong. That's why everyone stops her, so that she doesn't do it. Saki jumps into the pool as an excuse for Maki to CPR to her. Tegina gets depressed because they don't let her practice her trick. Then the protagonist allows her, but only by tying her hands. After a while, the girl doesn't get out of the water, so the assistant jumps in. Although she gets angry because she was almost finished the next day. The girl receives the protagonist with some cookies and coffee. He tells her how he realized that sometimes he has panic attacks while other times she doesn't. It turns out that this only happens when she does magic in front of others. So he tries recording her so as not to look directly into her eyes. The girl gets nervous anyways, so they start with a smaller audience. In this way, they increase the difficulty little by little, until she starts to fail her tricks. In the end, the protagonist goes home and leaves her with a nervous cardboard version of him. She begins to practice her magic without realizing that the boy was close to her. Fortunately, she manages to complete the trick, returning a bill to normal. Suddenly, the protagonist comes out to congratulate her, causing the girl to feel bad and vomit. Now Tejina tells the protagonist that they will practice Chinese magic, so the boy begins to imagine it. However, it was totally different. Girl explains that they will practice a Chinese art that consists of changing masks without being seen doing it. So the boys will work together to discover that secret. Now Zaki offers to do the test, but Tejina ends up splitting her blouse in half after lunch. The girl tells the protagonist that she couldn't eat anything because she was scolded for practicing magic in classes, and that tells the boy that she just read his mind, mentioning that he should feel sorry for her. Turns out she was practicing to be a mentalist, so she could guess what people think, and she mentions that the easiest way to read emotions is through of the look. Then the protagonist makes gestures to show her disinterest, but she doesn't even notice. Resigned, the boy agrees to practice mentalism. Tejina begins to take all her gesture in. The assistant tells her that it is not that difficult to read other people's emotions, especially hers. This is how he guesses everything the girl feels, causing her to get angry. Another day, she brings many tangerines that a farmer gave her. She was clearly going to do magic with them. However, during her attempt, it ends up falling in everyone's eyes later. They meet to announce that there will be extracurricular activities because the club is now official. They can visit places like daycare centers or nursing homes to do their shows. But as they haven't called them yet, Tejina suggests making a website to show what they can do. But when we see what she did, it left a lot to be desired, as it looked more like a horror page. That's why Zaki says that they should put photos of the shows they do. In this way, photo shoot begins. However, the page ended up looking like that of an idol. After a lot of work, Tejina presents the improvements she did. Although it only made the page worse, luckily they managed to call them for a daycare. After Zaki's show, and Maki takes Tejina's turn, who tries not to be nervous, but still ends up doing her tricks wrong. But because her audience was very simple, they congratulate her. This greatly excites the girl, who continues with a trick of disappearing a candy because the children were easy to distract. She manages to do it without any problem, but they attack her to look for the objects another day. The girl says that she will guess her darkest secrets using some envelopes where they had to write a secret anonymously, and then Tejina would have to guess who each one belonged to. The trick was that she had marked each envelope so she would know who each secret belonged to. When she receives the filled envelopes, she no longer remembers where she made the marks. When it comes to Maki, angry Tejina says not to write secrets obvious. Then the protagonist to make sure also participate here. Saki and Maki continue to be so predictable. When it's the girl's turn, we see that she left their paper blank. According to her, because she had nothing to hide, that's why the boys end up leaving later. We see Tejina and Saki meet in a retake exam while Saki mentions that the girl appears smart when she doesn't do magic. She suggests to play with the numbers where they must alternate between them, and the one who reaches 31 loses. Tejina had a trick. To win, he always had to stop at number 21 when she was about bongoing. To do so, she receives a call from the protagonist, so she gets distracted, causing Saki to win, which makes the girl very angry, who asks her to play again. Although she always ends up losing so much, so without Tursan Danti wanting, she ends up hitting their teacher. The summer arrives and the boys continue attending the club, and melting from the heat, where the girl takes advantage of the moment to buy them an ice cream that was actually a magic trick. Because the box didn't have anything, they were angry and made her buy them an ice cream for everyone along the way. She tries to make his spoon disappear, but it only ends up on the ground. Zaki says to stop the nonsense and do something summery like go to the beach. That enthusiasm rubs off on Tejina. This way they get ready. For the trip, the girl takes out her bag, showing how she will carry all her implements and magic and her school swimsuit. Then Zaki takes her to a shopping center to choose a good bikini. Then she asks the protagonist to recommend her one. She even offers to try on the one he likes. Then, the boy plans to recommend something daring when he was about to regret it. Mikey tells him that he will help him with that using negotiation tactic. Apparently, he was more enthusiastic than the protagonist. The first technique he suggests is to first ask for something exuberant, because, after rejecting it, she will accept what the boy really wanted, but he is not very convinced because it could look bad. So Maki says to start with something simple until she reaches the swimsuit with which she wants to see Tejina. Protagonist does so, giving way to many inconveniences. Then the girl Then Tajina decides to do a little magic by moving her shoes to the neighboring dressing room in this way. When she calls her assistant, he will think that she has disappeared. However, a worker puts the shoes back in their place, which causes the protagonist to get a big surprise. When the day comes, everyone goes to the beach. Here we see Tajina with her new swimsuit. This way they start having fun playing and cooling off in the sea. After a while, the boys feel tired while the girls still have energy. Suddenly they both lose their swimsuits and the boys don't plan to help them. Luckily, the senpai says that they will use her magic sand, which when in contact with water becomes moldable. Thanks to her, they use it as swimsuits. The bad thing is that it fell off when they dried. Zaki part uses his balloons so that they can cover themselves and get out of the sea. However, they end up breaking later. Protagonist meets Matara, who mistakes him for her grandmother, and when she realizes, she feels very embarrassed. Then the boy tells her that the club came to hang out. The bad thing is that it seems boring because they don't have internet. Madara tells him that her grandmother lives in this place, and there are many things that can only be done there. That's why they both lie down together and watch the sunset until it hides. Then the girl tells him to get up, realizing that the sun is still there. She explains that because of the spherical shape of the earth, higher it is, further you will see the curvature. The protagonist says that if Tajina saw it, she would think it was magic. Also adds that they should leave because it started to get cold, and that she must feel it more because of her swimsuit. Embarrassed, the girl runs away after solving that. Everyone meets to play with a watermelon here. Saki thinks that Madara is the protagonist's girlfriend, causing an argument between them. Then they start with the game. Maki is directed by his sister towards the watermelon. Although he ends up in another place, when it is Madara's turn, she says that she has a secret weapon. Thanks to her knowledge in physics and chemistry, she mentions that she has a great advantage, being able to detect the watermelon with her calculations. But we see her heading somewhere else. Meanwhile, Tajina ends up hitting everyone around her, until she arrives with Saki, who was buried in the sand, so she mistakes her for the watermelon that arrived at night. The boys want to finish it with fireworks. Tajina says that she also brought some. Although she is tied up because we already know what she is like, this way they start with the preparations. That's when the girl thinks of doing a trick with a lighter and 1,000 yen's bill. It doesn't work out, so she tries another similar one, causing her to light a rose which he ends up throwing at the firework. Because they don't have any more of these, the boys choose to leave, but Madara tells them that he has some saved from last year. Although they were simple, the protagonist is happy to pass time with his friends. In addition, Tajina tells him that they are getting closer. Another day, the girl is practicing a trick with balls, but she can't. The protagonist decides to try it. Here, he had to pretend to make the balls appear or disappear with the palm of his hands. But because she knits, she sweats a lot. It's complicated for her. That's why she wants to see the boy's big hands, and accidentally joins them, and she feels embarrassed saying that his hands are pretty. Although then, he feels the girl's sweat and starts to wash later. The boy comes in. At the club, meeting Saki on the floor, she mentions that she was sad because of an incident with Maki. It turns out that he discovered her organized among his trash and has stopped talking to her. Luckily, the girl had a puppet of Maki to console herself. Apparently, she is getting more and more estranged their relationship. Anyway, the boys take advantage of the moment to practice ventriloquism, thanks to Zaki's teaching. The protagonist manages to do it, but she still feels sad. So she tries to have fun with the boy. When he was about to kiss him, we discovered that she did it with a Tajina puppet, which she later gives him for his help. Although he doesn't want her, the next day everyone is calmly doing their thing, until Maki asks the protagonist if Tajina is dating someone. It turns out that the day before he saw her walking together with a stranger, then they decide to follow her, supposedly for her safety. Suddenly they see her enter a restaurant at a table for two, then she tries to practice the coin trick. Later she leaves that place, although the protagonist says that surely everything is a mistake. At first, they manages to predict all of her actions, which are very common. However, arriving in the afternoon, she meets a boy who upsets the protagonist and tries to hide it. Despite that, Saki and Maki wants to make sure that Tajina is dating a good person at the same time. Looking at the boy's clothing, they deduce that he may be a married man. At that moment, They see that he has a key of a van, so they think he is up to something strange. This is how they follow him to a store that sells things from Okinaga, where they begin to buy iBoard. Too many suggestive stuff, even go to a lingerie store in desperation. The protagonist tries to stop them while imagining many things. In the end, Tejina reveals to them that he was her older sister's husband, whom she accompanied to help him choose a birthday gift. The guy apologizes to them for the misunderstanding and takes them to his house in a van where the girl laughs about the whole situation. The next day, the protagonist walks through the corridors calmly. Suddenly, he hears a very suggestive conversation in the magic club. Although when he came in, it was just the boys doing art. With balloons first, they start with Saki teaching them how to inflate the balloons, because this has a technique. Even Zaki could do it with his nose. The next step was to make a puppy, because it was the easiest way because it didn't take up too many bubbles and movements. Protagonist tries it while Tejina cannot, because she is not able to fold the balloons. Furthermore, when she succeeds and finishes the figure, it ends up breaking another day. The girl says that she finally found a way to succeed in magic, so she puts some chains on after a minute. The girl doesn't make any noise or say anything. Worried, protagonist opens the door and realizes that Tejina was no longer there. Intrigued, the boy wonders if her trick was to disappear. Although then we see the girl locked in a locker. Bad thing is that she can't take off her restraints on his part. The boy leaves and Tejina locked in the locker. During the night, the guard checks the school and meets the girl. Now we see the boy enter the chemistry club, because the magic one was closed here. Madara gives him a drink, which she freezes, taking advantage of the phenomenon of superfocus by freeing it slowly. This one becomes solid when moving. Then Tejina appears and sees the boys together, so she thinks about not interrupting them for her part. Madara shows something to the boy, explaining to him what the principle of inertia consists of, where she will remove a tablecloth without the things from above falling down. However, this happens, and the protagonist jumps on her. Meanwhile, Tejina wonders if the boy would like science more than magic, so she is going to spy on him, finding him on top of Madara. This is misunderstood by her. Despite the fact that they try to explain to her, she challenges Madara to fight for her honor as presidents, where Tejina will also try to pull the tablecloth. Confident in herself, she makes the attempt. As expected, it does not work, and she ends up with her clothes soaked by luck. Madara dry them using science. Here she mentions that Tejina turned out to be quite harmless. And later, the rest of the boys arrive to invade the room the next day. The girl finds the protagonist sleeping in the club. That's why she says she will do magic in absolute silence, starting with making a coin fly, trying not to let it fall on the ground, and wake up the boy. At that moment, is heard how he is dreaming about Tejina, although it seems more like a nightmare on her part. The girl continues with her tricks, where her pigeon escapes and pecks at the boy. Luckily, he doesn't wake up after a while. Tejina is happy that everything went well and tries to wake up her assistant, but she feels sorry for him and leaves him for a while longer. Tejina dresses as a bunny, and the protagonist asks why she did it. She answers that it is to avoid her stage fright, because by wearing something embarrassing, she will focus more on that than on her fear. In this way, she practices her magic with the boy as a spectator, although he was more focused on something else, while Tejina thinks that those tricks caught his attention, so he celebrates, causing the protagonist to blush.